Today, we are talking about how to configure IPv6 address. You can configure it either manually or automatically. With manual configuration, you need to manually configure the IPv6 address, DNS, and the prefix of a terminal in a static way, just like what we do with the IPv4. Manually configuring IPv6 addresses is complex. 128-bit IPv6 address is 4 times longer than IPv4 address. Thus, users are advised to choose automatic configuration if it is possible. Automatic configuration is classified into 2 types: stateless address method and DHCPv6 method. Stateless address method is also called SLAAC. However, DHCPv6 method can also be classified as either stateless or stateful address auto-configuration. When a terminal uses stateless address auto-configuration, the interface's ID of its IPv6 address is automatically calculated and generated by the terminal itself. In the meanwhile, its network prefix and DNS parameters are generated by the gateway and sent to the terminal through RA messages. When the terminal uses DHCPv6 stateless address auto-configuration, the IPv6 address is generated by itself in stateless way. The prefix and DNS parameters are configured by the DHCPv6 server. When the terminal uses DHCPv6 stateful address auto-configuration, the DHCPv6 server allocates the IPv6 address, prefix, and DNS parameters to it. Here, we introduce one of the modes in DHCPv6 stateful address auto-configuration, which is DHCPv6 EUI64. When a terminal uses this mode, the DHCPv6 server calculates the interface ID of the terminal's IPv6 address based on the terminal's MAC address. Then it generates the IPv6 address of the terminal based on the locally configured network prefix on DHCPv6 server. After that, it allocates the IPv6 address to the terminal. For now, the Android operating system does not support this DHCPv6 address auto-configuration mode. When terminals with Android OS exist on the network, we need to use stateless address auto-configuration. Earlier, we mentioned a specification called EUI64. This specification describes how to convert the MAC address of a terminal into the interface ID of its IPv6 address. A MAC address is comprised of 48 bits. The first 24 bits indicate the vendor identifier of the terminal, and the last 24 bits indicate the extension identifier of the terminal. According to the EUI64 specification, FFFE is inserted between the 2 groups of 24 bits, forming a 64-bit string of characters. Then, the 7th bit in descending order is changed from 0 to 1, generating a 64-bit interface ID. Finally, the interface ID and the 64-bit prefix form a 128-bit IPv6 address for the terminal. This is how EUI64 converts the MAC address of the terminal into the interface ID of its IPv6 address. That's all for today. Thank you for watching.